All right, in this video, I'd like to answer a question that I have received countless times over the course of my life. And that question is, why am I an atheist? And when I say atheist, I don't exactly mean um, someone who denies the existence of a god, deity, like some metaphysical being outside of space and time, all that. What I mean by atheist is somebody who denies any God specific to any kind of religion. So, if somebody were to say, well, I think that there might be some kind of first cause that um, pushed the first domino in the causal chain of the universe, and that's the kind of God I believe in. I probably wouldn't have too many contentions, but I'm still um, skeptical, skeptical of that. But um, when it comes to something like that, it really comes down to, well, what qualities does that thing have, right? So even if, let's say, something does exist outside of space and time, that some entity, some being that caused the universe, well, did it cause the universe and it's still there? Did it cause the universe and then it died or stopped existing? Or, like, what are we dealing with here? Or does it have the qualities of the Christian God, or the Abrahamic God, the omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, all that kind of stuff? Or does it have one and not the others, or something like that? Or is it a God that's rather than all good, all evil? We have no idea. And to say that just because the idea of something outside of this, our space and time and our universe, or our conception of reality that could have possibly caused our reality to exist, seems a little bit fishy to me to then say, well, now since I gave that possibility, I can now graft on all of my worldview of what a god should be. So, Christian god, boom, Hindu god, boom, Greek pantheon, boom, so on and so forth. Um, so that is the kind of atheism I am talking about. Specific deities, specific religious systems, I am atheistic towards. I don't believe in them. And when I say that, I don't mean I don't believe that they have some truth in them. I just don't think that truth is entirely literal, and I don't think it has much to do about the natural world or the cosmos or even any metaphysical claims in religion. I would just off the cuff deny them. But if somebody were to say, well, in Christianity, I get this I can derive certain moral principles from Christianity, and I find it very appealing because of that. I'm like, okay, cool. Me too. I think most of the Western world gets a lot of good moral principles from Christianity. But what I have a problem with is the people who think that this book that was written thousands of years ago is making some real true claims about the natural world. And oftentimes when Christians try to do this, or any kind of religious faith, Muslims make the same mistake. They're taking stories that are mythical and literalizing them so that they can combat science, I guess. Um, and I believe this is a product of the Enlightenment. They kind of were pigeonholed into this position, but it doesn't really work because in the ancient world, everything was mythical. History was mythical. Um, Archaeology was mythical. Any discipline, science, there was no science. It was just all myth. Everything was bundled up into this one package, this homogeneous package of myth, and it kind of explained everything. So, for example, storms. Well, we don't have um, meteorology in um, 200 or 2000 BC, So we're going to create a myth and a story to account for this, to explain to our children and to people, so that they feel a little bit more of an understanding about what's going on, and they might be able to act in certain ways. Now, whether or not this is actually true or not doesn't really matter, because at least to the people at the time, they're getting something out of it, right? And if you go even further back to the earliest strata of human civilization, you can actually account for how a god or deity might be conceptualized very early on. So let's say we're in a tribe of hunter-gatherers, and you and I are out on a hunt, and we hear some rustling in the bushes, and you hear the rustling in the bushes and think, oh shit, it's a tiger, and you run away. And I just think, oh, it's the wind. Well, you, who runs away because you think it's a tiger, even though there might not be a tiger there, are more fit to survive than me. Because if there was a tiger, I'm dead, and you're free, you're safe. So this kind of thing, this I guess you could say tendency towards assigning agency to certain things, is advantageous evolutionarily speaking. So this kind of thing gets propagated over and over and over again, from the dawn of human time to now, and over time we get certain things like religions, and now we have culture, and now we want to account for certain things in nature. So we're going to create a myth, and we're going to create gods and goddesses and demons and angels and mythological creatures to account in some kind of way for what's going on. Because humans have this inherent almost need to explain things. And oftentimes, when we do explain things, or when we did explain things in the past, we would our explanations would be very reflective of us. Think about just what a god is. A god is just a person that controls nature, right? So Zeus is a thunderstorm embodied in a person. Okay? And at least when I see that, I think, well, that's because part of us is projecting ourselves onto nature. And why might we do that? Well, I think a good reason is primitive humans, when we see things being caused and changed, generally speaking, we are doing that causing and changing. And this is even reflected in a lot of modern arguments. Have you ever heard the argument from design for God? The idea that, okay, imagine the universe is like a clock, and God's the clockmaker. Well, if you have a clock, it has to have a maker, right? Well, the universe is so complex that it must have a maker. Well, the difficulty is a clock needs a maker because it's a man-made thing, right? But saying that the universe is like a clock presupposes your conclusion that it was made. Now, complexity does not necessitate a maker. That's just something that's, I guess you could say, arrogantly derived from our understanding of the world, or our primitive understanding of the world. Because when we, like I said, when we were primitive people, we're looking around at everything, and the only things that are making crazy changes, at least to us, are us, right? Animals kind of just go about their business. They're not intentionally making changes. They might kill each other, but it's different. When a human does something, we make a tool, we make a fire, we make a building, we, do all these things. And there's a little bit of arrogance, like I said, and bias mixed in with that, I'm sure. And that is what kind of, and also with that idea of agency that culminates into a deity. And obviously these things take time. This is an evolutionary kind of idea. So it's going to take generations and generations and generations. And even if you look at religions, religions evolve. Just look at Judaism into Christianity, even from like to Islam. They're all kind of stemming off one another and evolving based on the environments that they've been nested in. And for this reason, when I look at things like that, it's hard for me to believe that any of this is true. And when I say true, I mean true metaphysically speaking. Some true statement about reality itself. Not true in like some metaphorical or symbolic sense. Of course, it has that. It's a lie that tells the truth. But nevertheless, it is a lie. When the Bible says that there was a worldwide flood that killed everybody, that is empirically false, right? Or when it says that Jesus walked on water, that is empirically false. So, and maybe you are in opposition to empiricism, but if you're in opposition to empiricism, then if you're not throwing away your iPhone and all the technology you have and just living a primitive sedentary life or something like that, then I don't really buy it, right? You are gaining almost everything in your life from the developments of modern natural science and empiricism, right? We know empiricism works because we shoot a rocket into space and it doesn't blow up, right? If empiricism was faulty, we can't do that. If numbers were faulty, if science was faulty, we wouldn't be able to do that. We wouldn't be able to make predictions and be right. Einstein wouldn't be able to make a prediction about black holes and 50 years later, in retrospect, it be true, right? Empiricism has a lot to it that is very valid. And maybe there are some epistemological problems, but in the practical real world, empiricism is the best we got, at least on the explanation of the natural world kind of area. Now, morals, of course, and that kind of realm, and art, it's not going to cover very well. But anyways, my point is, when you look at the way religion has developed over time, and the fact that there are so many different religions, and they vary from culture to culture, even amongst very close peoples, right? You could look at like the Americas. There are different kinds of cultures with different kinds of. This is like the past, like the Aztecs, the Incas, and the Olmecs. Like all these kinds of different people groups had different religions. They varied from one another. When you look at this kind of thing and the way religions evolve over time, and the fact that most claims in religion on a empirical scientific level are not true, it's very hard to believe that this is some real thing. Now, what religious people might counter argue and say is, well, God does exist and our conception of it is wrong. It's like, okay, well, you're still kind of relying on that possibility of some being external to the universe or reality as a whole. But at that point, you're conceding that you can't make any real claims about him. Because if you're saying, well, we just can't possibly represent his nature, then, well, all we have is some possible thing that exists and no way to account for any of the properties he has. Right? So that's why, to me, atheism just feels like a more reasonable stance. And I know there is a lot of baggage that comes with atheism, the whole God is dead kind of thing, Nietzschean idea. But I think that regardless of this, we can still come to an understanding and an appreciation of morals and art and culture and all these things that people often associate with the death of God and losing without religion. You can derive morals from the natural world. In fact, morals are just a part of the natural world, right? We don't need a God. Saying that God exists makes it even more um, subjective than me saying that morals are derived from nature and that morals are just this social system. Um, so I think most people um, nowadays don't need God. I think we can get a lot from religion if we read it as just a text, as a piece of literature, poetry, prose, all these different kinds of forms that it takes. But looking at it as some literally true thing, I think is a complete waste of time and actually just puts a wool over your eyes from the actual facts and beautiful things about the world around you, right? Like I see people all the time who deny basic scientific facts like evolution that to me are incredibly cool and really give a comprehensive explanation of what like how we came to be and where we came from and the course of history before us and including us. And this is all just flushed down the drain by literalist Christians or religious people. And to me, that's a huge waste. You can still appreciate your religion and not take this literalist approach, and you can still appreciate science. Um, a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking that science and religion are mutually exclusive, but they're not. You can believe in God. You can believe in God and believe in science. You could just say, "Oh, well, God just created the universe and all the stuff about the 6 days and that bullshit was metaphorical," right? So, yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to get across is just that um, I feel like even if you are a Christian, I'm not trying to convert anybody to atheism. I just want to explain why I'm an atheist, but even if you are religious, there's a lot you can get from taking a look at your religious convictions and the kind of stances you take about religion and modifying them. Because if you take everything a religion says literally, I think you're completely looking at it wrong. And you're living in a fantasy world. And I'm not trying to sound condescending, but you are. If you genuinely believe that certain claims in the Bible about like giant people or angels and demons and yada yada yada, you are that stuff does not exist. Now, if you read that metaphorically and get the actual narrative point that's being made within the story, you can actually get more out of the story. But when you just take it literally, number one, you are muddying your conception of reality, but also you're not even getting the point of the story. So, just to summarize, the main point or the main reason why I'm an atheist is number one, like anybody who might answer this kind of question, even a religious person, it's just how I grew up. But also, the um, immense amount of evidence in regards to the history of religion and evolution, talking about the origins of the conception of deity, I guess you could say, and how that evolves over time and how different religions evolve over time and the variation in religions across the world. This is why, these things are why I hold to the position of atheism much more strongly than I did ever before. The more and more I research religion and become more interested in religious kind of topics and talk to religious people, the less convinced I am. And I think that says something. I don't feel like I'm confirming my bias at any point. I feel like I've really tried to look at the other side of the coin, and as much as I do that, I can't see the position any more clearly. I can't see why people would believe this, um, aside from just ignorance, right? Um, so yeah, I think that really that really encapsulates the issue. I think people are just um, a lot of people are ignorant, and I think a lot of people are not only ignorant, but um, they don't want to know. They don't want to understand it because they are so um, attached to these ideas and the truth, quote unquote, behind them. When in reality, there is not much truth to it at all. There's not, at least literally speaking, there's not much truth at all to it. Um, so yeah, I hope I hope that was coherent. I know that was a little bit of a ramble, a little bit of a rant, but I thought I would just throw this video out here. I might make another one in the same vein later on with a little bit more information, but yeah, I kind of just want to hop on here and just speak my mind on that kind of topic. So I hope you guys enjoy this kind of video, and yeah, y'all have a good one.